Hey everybody, I'm doing some planning for some upcoming fall hunts here, and I thought I would chat with you a little bit about what to look for in aerial photography for rut hunts. I'm talking the first couple weeks of November, and I'm looking at spots here in Iowa, Missouri, and Kansas, and these are places that I've hunted before, with the exception of one, and I just wanted to kind of walk you through a little bit about what I look for and the types of things that I'm trying to find that will influence deer movements during the rut. And obviously I'm looking for terrain features and topography and what I call structure, which could be a stream or creek, it could be a bigger river, it could be a steep like a riverbank, a slip bluff, just a real steep hill that they don't like to cross, or maybe like in some areas it'd be a limestone bluff or something like that. Or it could be less obvious features such as the edge of an open field or a busy highway or things like that. I'm looking for anything that would influence deer movement. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to find areas that these bucks, when they're traveling looking for does during that rut, where they would get funneled down into a predictable area where you could put a tree stand and get them within range. So let's look at some aerial photography here a little bit, and let me just kind of walk you through what works for me in scouting for these areas and give you some ideas of what to look for in the area that you're hunting. Now here's a good example of an excellent rut funnel on public land. This area right here, this fence right here separates private land from public land. This is private and this is public land, state DNR land, and as you can see they have planted some crop in here. They're food plots basically. This is clover, for example. This is a two-track road that the DNR uses to come back and service this area with tractors and so forth. And we also have a creek running through here. Now remember, an important part of rut funnels often is not just the terrain and structure like trees and creeks and things like that, but it's also topography. And that's an important thing to remember, because the topography can actually really enhance the value of a rut funnel. And that's the case with this particular one, because this is a ridge right here. This is quite a bit higher than this down in here, and so not only do you have these features like the field edges and the creek all funneling towards this area right here at the edge of the property, but you also have a long running ridge that runs here, and then it makes like a V where it funnels the activity down into this area right here. So this area right here is an excellent spot for waylaying a buck during the rut that would be just traveling these edges. If you just look at this picture, there's a lot of stuff that just all comes together right here. It's just like the spokes of a wheel. And it's an excellent spot because it's got the creek running through there, it's got this road, and of course it's got a fence. So these deer are specifically crossing that fence in one area quite a bit. There's probably going to be more than one trail in there, but there's going to be a couple really good ones. And this section right here is not very wide. It's only about 100 yards wide. So this is a perfect example of an excellent rut funnel where these bucks are going to be traveling on their feet during the daylight. The first and second week in November, they're looking for does. They know where the bedding areas are, and they're going to be traveling through this area. It's a perfect place to sit in a tree stand and spend the entire day there. Now let's look at another example. Now here's an example of a piece of public hunting property and a large block of timber along a river, and this is in Iowa, and I'm very familiar with this place. I shot a mature buck in here about 10 years ago. It was the only time I hunted in this area. And it was not a buck that was built to score well at all, but it was about a 6-7 year old buck, a big mature buck for public land. So I believe that was in 2010. And this is state DNR land here once again, and this is a funneling area that is not something that you would really recognize by aerial photography like this, if you look at this right here, it looks pretty much featureless, but this illustrates the importance of topography in looking for funnels, because right back in here is where I shot this deer, and you can't really see it very well, but if you look right through there, there is you can kind of see the shadow of it's a very steep bluff that drops off into a shelf, and then you have the river. And so there's a very neck down area right here, and this is also a ditch, a steep creek that comes down through. Here's no water in it, but this is a really important funnel right there that many of the deer who are traveling from this area have to go through that to get up in through here. Now this is not particularly an area where deer are going to funnel between bedding and feeding areas, but any bucks that are traveling between doe bedding areas are going to go through that funnel, and that's why it's an excellent spot. So you've got barriers on two sides, and they're topographical barriers. There's a steep bluff on one side, and it's difficult for them to cross, to traverse. In much of the areas, you'd have to be a mountain goat to go up it practically. And then, of course, on the other side, you have the river. And this area right here was a good doe bedding area, because on the inside of these bends, there's a lot of, I guess you'd call it floodplain. And it's not very wide. It's 50 yards wide maybe, but it's got some willows and grasses and things like that make for a really good doe bedding area. And so that's a really good spot right in through there. That gives you an example of how terrain topography can influence bucks' movements during the rut. Okay, here's an example of a situation where there's a really good funnel that's associated with a known bedding area, particularly for does. This area right here, and we're in southeast Kansas right here, this area right here is a known bedding area for does. I've had trail cameras in there, and I've hunted this area quite a bit. The does like this right here because it's real grassy. Let me just zoom in on it so you can kind of see what it looks like there. It's tall grass. In fact, you can see their trails running in and out of here, and somewhat on this side too, you see deer trails there. But as you zoom out on this, you can look at the topography and the way that everything just kind of funnels right down into this area right here. So any deer that are moving from this area, whether they're going out here to feed, you got crop fields out here. You've got quite a bit of timber up in here where bucks would cruise, and potentially more doe bedding area. You just kind of look at how the lay of this looks. It just kind of all funnels right down into this area right here. That's just a narrow neck down area, and that is a known excellent spot where I've got quite a few good bucks on trail cameras, and I've yet to shoot a big buck in there. I've encountered quite a few 3 and 2.5 and 3.5 year old bucks in there, but I've yet to really shoot a big one. But they're definitely there, and it's just a matter of time for the next time I draw a Kansas tag. So that's another good example of a situation where you have lots of land features that just funnel down into a really predictable area where it's just kind of like an oblong, like a long hourglass shape. Everything goes right there, and the deer are just naturally going to work their way right into a narrow area where they're going to be within range, because this is 30 yards wide through most of it. Excellent spot. Now here's an example of something that's not per se a funnel actually, but it is a very predictable structure that creates deer movement or funnels deer movement. If you look at this ditch right here that has all of these tributaries or forks coming off of it, you notice that there's several areas where they come close to other ditches on the opposite side of this field. Now this particular one here is a good example where, let me just measure this, that's 178 feet from here to there. So You know, you're looking at about 55 yards basically for the deer to cross from there to there. And bucks will stay in this cover as much as they can when they're traveling during the day. You got a little bit farther, 170 yards maybe across to this one right here. You've got another example of one right here, and where they can jump from this to that. And these areas are perfect for the rut because these bucks are on their feet moving, as I've said several times. And you're looking for areas like this where they can pop across the open fields with a minimum of exposure. They don't like to expose themselves during the daylight, and so if you're going to contact them during normal shooting hours, these are excellent areas to try to get within range of them. If you jump right in here, there's a pretty good chance that on either side of this there's probably a bunch of rubs and scrapes in there. I know for a fact that there is on this one, and I haven't been up and looked at that one yet, but I will at some point. And so that's another good example of the types of areas to look for where you can actually funnel this buck movement right by your stand. So that should be helpful to you. Keep in mind that what it looks like on Google Earth or whatever program you're using for aerial photography is not necessarily always what it looks like on the ground. And some of these spots that look terrific, you can go out there and find out that they really aren't that good, and when you get on boots on the ground in person. And others that you look at and you think they're just worth maybe walk in there and have a look, and they turn out to be fantastic. So just keep that in mind. Everything that you see on aerial photography isn't going to be exactly what it looks like when you actually show up there. And there's other things like these steep bluffs that I mentioned, and steep river banks and so forth that can be difficult to see on the aerial photography. But if you'll spend some time doing this, that'll really help you find that funnel. That'll be terrific for you. And once you find these, they can be good year after year after year. Sometimes they'll change a little bit based on what the crop's rotation is like. You know, one year it's corn, next year it's soybean, next year it's wheat or whatever. That can change things. But realistically, if you find a really good funnel, it's going to be good year after year after year. So they're worth putting in the effort to find them online and then go look at them in person. And drop a comment below if you have other suggestions or anything that you would like to add from this, or even if you disagree with it. And of course, hit that subscribe button right there, and so you don't miss any more of these videos. There's a lot more good stuff coming.